Welcome to Ask China, a special series focusing on important subjects related to China. Today we'll look at a pressing issue in China, but also around the world, the environment. While speaking at the second session of the 13th National People's Congress, or NPC, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said China will strengthen its efforts to prevent and control pollution, promote ecological conservation, and make fresh progress in pursuing green development. What achievements has China made in tackling pollution? What obstacles are ahead? We collected questions from people living in more than 10 countries around the world via CGTN's social media platforms, as well as the Q&A website Quora. To find answers to these questions, I'm pleased to be joined by Changhua, CEO of the Beijing Future Innovation Center and Executive Director of the Professional Association for China's Environment. This series will be aired both on CGTN's new media platforms as well as on TV. First of all, let's take a look at what our journalists found out about people's general impressions about China's environment.
For me, especially about China, is the pollution.
Bad quality of air, from what I hear, is really bad.
Kind of really hard to breathe.
So we have been hearing a lot of negative impressions of China's air quality, especially in big cities. What is the reality? Is the air really bad to breathe? Have there been changes?
There is a certain level of objectivity in their opinions. The reality is, yet we still face challenges, and there are still a number of days when air quality is bad, and when the government even encourages people to stay indoors as much as possible.
When the air is particularly bad. Yes.
And but then if you look at the number of days, we call it blue sky days in Beijing, since 2013, we see obvious progress. And this particular guy, actually Zhou Yi, started every day taking a photo, recording the air quality in Beijing at the same spot near the Guangmao area. That's really remarkable in a way that the photo, the picture tells you, shows the changes actually of the air quality. And it's very convincing.
And my feeling is, of course, there are bad air days, but almost the next day or day afterwards, air would get better, and sometimes you would have complete blue sky. So it's a, it's a changing situation, and it's never been a level where I say I'm suffocating or I can't function as normal. Actually, there are statistics to back my impression. The PM 2.5 measurement actually decreased in the year 2018 on top of what has been achieved over the previous few years. The average density of PM 2.5 in 338 cities nationwide fell 9.2% year on year. So it's not a surprise. What are the factors behind such big and consistent trend?
National government has made a serious commitment to the people in this country that by 2020 they're going to deliver a relatively satisfactory sort of outcome of air quality to its people. So that's why this country is on it. In terms of efforts, tremendous. On the overarching side, the government has taken the ecological integrity very seriously, meaning we need to address this particular challenge in an integrated manner. We need to control the sources, of course, to make sure we reduce emissions. Very importantly, to change really the energy structure. So if you look at the renewable energy and the installations that has been growing dramatically, and China is already leading globally. If you look at the level of attention paid to energy efficiency compared to many other countries, probably China is one of the top countries that really pays so much attention to energy efficiency. So through that process, actually, so if coal burning is decreasing and the control of pollution is enhanced, and then that's generating the outcome actually of where we are today.
Now let's take a look at some of the questions concerning how China has been dealing with pollution. Let's take a look.
What are your specific plans to address the environmental issues that your country is facing right now?
I want to ask about the politics of their air pollution, because it affects our country a lot.
China has set very specific targets about environmental pollution control and prevention. Current stage, particular focus actually is air, water, and the soil. So air, we talked about the air pollution already, and we started to see the outcomes. Water pollution prevention control has also been started, and particularly from laws, regulations perspective, and also from governance perspective. And today in China, probably you cannot find any lake or river without a master, without someone, local officials name it to it, actually.
That's quite an interesting approach. I don't see anywhere else in the world which has this system where you appoint a master to a river, to one section of a river, or to a lake. What is the idea behind that?
Accountability. The fundamental part is that really to drive home literally to local decision makers is that when you make decisions about what kind of industries you want to bring to your city, to your region, what kind of infrastructure you're going to invest or to build, you have to pay attention to the ecological foundation, particularly the water quality in your region.
Okay, so there's the question from this student who seems to be coming from South Korea. What about South Korea? People there think that their air quality is being affected by China's smog. Of course, there's no boundary to air pollution, as you just said.
I think it's fair to a large extent.
It's possible?
It's possible because air, it's there. We all breathe air. Pollution doesn't matter where it is. It's emitted into the atmosphere. When the wind blows, actually goes with the wind, literally. And so I wouldn't be surprised, actually, Japan, South Korea, countries in the neighboring countries, there are days when the wind blows, actually, pollution could potentially actually get dispersed to where they are. I joked about it sometimes, actually, if even the U.S. complained about, air pollution from China affecting Honolulu, Hawaii, even west coast of San Francisco. The way I look at it, say, okay, and when the industrialized countries in the industrialization process back in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, right, and they emitted lots of air pollutant into the atmosphere, and the wind blew then as well, and probably they've been blown somewhere, maybe some to China as well, but somehow we were not aware of this sort of challenge.
Well,
we never complained about it.
Or
right?
maybe we got the smog from European countries because the way
well,
how
it depends, right?
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, I think globally we recognize we have to protect the air quality because it's so related to people's health. And it really falls on the jurisdiction of political leaders of different countries to really seriously address this challenge.
Well, you talk about the political leaders. Actually, the Chinese leadership has been very active in drafting plans. For instance, there was a plan in 2013, and then there is another plan, a 3-year plan issued in 2018 to bring back so-called blue sky, ensure that cities at prefecture level or above had good quality air days 80% of the time by 2020, and the percentage of heavily polluted days must decrease by over 25% compared with 2050. How do you see the approach and the role of the government in fighting air pollution in China? Is there any difference between the Chinese government approach or the Chinese approach with successful approaches in other parts of the world?
First of all, I think the government has absolutely critical role to play in driving environmental quality improvement. The reason is that environmental issues are public goods. It cannot possibly leave it to the market. Compared to other countries, if you look at the U.S. and Europe as well, and federal level, national government level also played a very significant role. If you look at the 1970s in the U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, was set up, and the Cleaner Act was adopted. And so you need the national government, actually political leaders' commitment to that. The other reason is look at, particularly now, looking today and looking at the future, we also recognize actually by having more restricted laws, regulations, and policy incentives, you're also creating literally a market for environmental solutions, environmental technologies. That's why in China, something we call the environmental industry. They are part of economic growth agenda.
All right. According to data released by the World Health Organization in 2018, among the 20 most polluted cities around the world, there are 14 in India. That is why Maria Naira, which is WHO's head of public health, said India probably can learn from China in terms of dealing with air pollution. What can China share with India?
Actually, air quality challenge in India is much daunting than China today.
But you don't hear as much.
Because the media, Western media do not necessarily pay enough attention to that, And so what India can learn from China? Tremendous. starting point, they really need to pay attention to the ecological integrity to make sure, deploying technologies and transform their industry, transform their energy structure. And when they build the infrastructure, they need to really pay attention to materials, to the pollution level there as well.
Well, it's a wholesome effort. It's a holistic approach. I don't think you can just do that in addressing environmental issues. Basically, it's how the government functions, right? I think.
Absolutely, it's a governance issue.
Yeah, it's a governance issue. Okay, in terms of air quality, another important thing is about motor vehicle exhaust. And China has, or the city of Beijing has very frustrating to some other people, but effective mechanism to limit the number of cars on the streets. John S.B. Chan on Quora has a question asking, when I went to Beijing last time, they regulated that on the odd days of the month, cars with an odd last number on their license plates were allowed to drive on the streets, and even numbers for even days. I don't know if that worked to improve air pollution. Actually, it's not like that,
It's
right?
not like that. We take two numbers, actually, off the street every day, not just, odd and even. Does that work? It works. And it contributes tremendously, actually, to improve local air quality. For cities like Beijing, because we do not have much industrial facilities anymore, we've already relocated industrial facilities to the neighboring provinces, regions already. So locally, vehicular exhaust actually definitely contributes a big portion of the air quality locally.
All right. In terms of green development, there is a recent NASA report which found that green leaf area around the world increased considerably, mostly because of China and India's efforts, but particularly for China. China alone accounted for about 25% of the global net increase in green leaf area. So Greg Freemeyer on Quora asked, what is the magic behind China's growing vegetation coverage, and how many gigatons of carbon per year are their efforts sequestering in vegetation and soil?
The statement was released from NASA, right, which is more objective. And just from satellite space on the planet, actually. So China's reforestation plantation effort and India's agriculture in particular have been contributing to the global ecological health, and that's recognized more so. The magic, and for China, I think I don't know how you remember the days when I was younger, and there was a day, every day, March the 12th, which is going to be next week or something like that. It's a national day. Everyone, every individual, the public is motivated or mobilized actually to plant trees. So planting trees, reforest actually, or replant, revegetating the land has been part of the society for a long time. And the contribution to sequestration of carbon, we all know, plants, vegetation, forest, and also land, particularly the soil. They are very important carbon sinks. And globally, we all recognize the contribution of forestry, of reforestation, vegetation, and also soil as carbon sink to contribute to the solution of climate change.
Yeah. Everybody plant a tree for 1.4 billion people. That's a lot of green leaf area.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Ms. Wu Changhua. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Ask China. As always, I'm not going to go without leaving you a question. As we discussed in our interview, in order to tackle pollution, Beijing has the policy of taking 1/5 of the cars off the streets on a daily basis. But on special occasions, half of the cars are taken off the roads. Some people are saying in order to further increase air quality, it should become a norm to have only half of the cars on the roads on a daily basis. What do you think? What's your opinion? Leave your comments or answers on the social media platforms of CGTN. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Ask China.